The large silver shuttle landed softly on the smooth landing pad of Veltrian 5. The sky was dark purple, and two small moons hung in the distance. The air was cool, and everything looked very clean and organized. This was not Earth. This was the home of the Zeliari, an advanced alien species, known for their science and especially their genetic engineering. Daniel stood at the exit ramp, looking around with wide eyes. This was his first time on an alien planet. Even though he was a scientist himself, everything about this place made him feel small. Tall towers made of shining crystal rose in the distance, and strange flying machines moved smoothly through the air. "Welcome to Veltrian 5, human biologist Daniel," a soft female voice spoke behind him. Daniel turned around. Standing there was Dr. Varel, his assigned partner for the research exchange program. She was tall, slim, and elegant. Her skin was pale blue with a soft purplish tone. She had small elf-like ears, and her eyes were large with a slight glow. She looked beautiful, but her face was calm, almost emotionless. "Thank you," Daniel replied, trying to smile. Varel only nodded. She studied him for a moment, as if scanning him completely. Her sharp mind was already making judgments. "So, this is the human they sent," she thought. "He seems physically weak, simple in form. His genetics must be extremely basic compared to ours." Varel had never worked with a human before. In fact, she often spoke against involving humans in Zeliari scientific work. To her, humans were emotional and chaotic. They lacked the precision and advanced genetics that her kind valued so much. "This way, please," she said, turning and walking toward a sleek transport vehicle. Daniel followed her, carrying his small bag. The vehicle moved silently as it drove them toward the main research facility. Inside, Daniel tried to start a conversation. "I've read many papers about Zeliari genetics. Your work on multi-strand DNA repair is very impressive." Varel glanced at him but showed no emotion. "Yes, we have made progress that your species may not fully understand yet." Daniel smiled politely. "Well, that's why I'm here. To learn, and maybe, to help." Varel didn't respond. She believed there was nothing a human could teach her. Still, the council had ordered her to work with him. She had no choice. Soon, they arrived at the research complex. The building was enormous, made of shining metal and crystal, with wide halls and floating data screens. Daniel was shown to his labroom, which was connected to Vero's own workspace. "This will be your station," she said. "We begin tomorrow at first light. Do not be late." "I won't," Daniel promised. As she turned to leave, Daniel noticed a slight hesitation in her step. Was she uncomfortable or simply annoyed? He couldn't tell. But one thing was clear. She didn't trust him. The next morning, the work began. Their project was an important one. A dangerous mutation was spreading among the Zeliari population, slowly damaging their perfect genetic structure. If not solved, it could lead to the collapse of their species. Varel explained the details with a cold, professional tone. "The mutation weakens our immune response and lowers fertility rates. Our current treatments slow it, but do not stop it. We must find a complete correction at the genetic level." Daniel listened carefully, his mind already spinning with ideas. "Have you tried using adaptive gene editing based on environmental triggers? Sometimes the body can be trained to repair itself if given the right signals." Varel frowned slightly. "Our methods are more advanced than Earth's human. We do not rely on such primitive approaches." Daniel nodded politely but made a mental note. Sometimes even the most advanced systems overlook simple solutions. As the hours passed, Daniel began to notice differences in their working styles. Varel was precise and extremely detailed. She followed every rule and ran hundreds of simulations before even touching real samples. Daniel, on the other hand, liked to experiment, test ideas early, and learn from mistakes. At first, Varel found his behavior frustrating. "You take risks too easily," she said one afternoon, as Daniel suggested trying a new method. "One misstep could corrupt valuable data." Daniel smiled. "Sometimes you have to break a few rules to find new doors, Dr. Varel. That's how many discoveries are made." She didn't answer, but something inside her stirred. His confidence, his curiosity, and his different way of thinking were unusual. No Zeliari would speak like that. They feared failure too much. As days turned into weeks, their partnership slowly began to change. Varel, though still serious and distant, started asking Daniel's opinions more often. His creative ideas, while unorthodox, sometimes showed surprising results. One experiment led to a new way to isolate the mutation. "They were studying your method. It worked," Varel admitted one evening. Reviewing the results, Daniel grinned. Sometimes thinking outside the box helps. Varel studied him for a moment. Your species is strange. Your genetic structure is unstable compared to ours, yet you adapt quickly. You change, survive, even thrive in harsh environments. But one of our strengths, Daniel said. We may not be as advanced as you, but we're stubborn, we keep going. Varel found herself strangely drawn to that idea. Adaptability, emotion, courage, things her people often lacked because of their focus on perfection. Later that night, Varel sat alone in her private chamber, thinking about her human partner. She reviewed his genetic profile on her screen. His structure is simple but surprisingly flexible. His immune system reacts quickly to changes. His cells repair damage at a faster rate than ours in certain cases. Fascinating. And confusing. She touched her chest lightly, feeling an odd sensation. Was it curiosity? Interest? No, it couldn't be. Zeliari emotions were controlled. She was a scientist. Yet, for the first time in many years, Varel felt uncertain. Perhaps humans are not as limited as I believed, she thought. But surely, no human could ever truly satisfy a Zeliari, emotionally or genetically. She tried to dismiss the thought, but deep inside, something had already begun to change. Meanwhile, in his own room, Daniel lay on his bed, looking up at the strange glowing stars of Veltrian 5. He thought about Varel. She's cold, but brilliant and beautiful, he whispered to himself. I wonder if she ever see me as more than just a simple human. With both hearts unknowingly starting to shift, neither of them realized yet how deeply their paths were about to cross. The real test was still to come. End of part 1. The days passed quickly on Veltrian 5 as Daniel and Varel continued their work together. Every morning, Daniel arrived early, ready with new ideas, while Varel prepared the laboratory with exact calculations and strict planning. Their workroom was filled with holographic screens, glowing samples, and complex machines humming softly as they worked side by side. Though their personalities were very different, something strange was happening between them. A kind of respect was slowly growing. Varel often found herself secretly observing Daniel. He worked with great focus but was always calm, even when problems came up. He often smiled when facing difficulties, something rare among Zeliari scientists. They believed in control, while Daniel seemed comfortable with uncertainty. One morning, while studying the mutation under a powerful microscope, Daniel spoke softly, breaking the silence. Varel, have you ever considered that your species may be too perfect for your own good? She raised an eyebrow, not used to such bold statements. Explain. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes shining with curiosity. Perfection means stability, but stability can mean weakness. When something new, like this mutation, appears, your systems don't know how to fight it because they're not used to change. Varel folded her arms, thinking, you are suggesting that our strength has become our weakness. Daniel nodded. Exactly. Your people focused so much on controlling genetics that your natural defenses stopped evolving. Varel was silent for a moment. His words made sense in a way she didn't like to admit. She finally answered. Then how does your species survive with so many imperfections? Daniel smiled. Because we embrace them. Our bodies are full of small flaws, but those flaws give us flexibility. When something goes wrong, we adapt. Varel stared at him. His way of thinking was so different from her own. It both frustrated and fascinated her. Later that day, they decided to test Daniel's theory. If the mutation was dangerous because of its stability, maybe introducing small changes could weaken it. They designed a new experiment using a simulation chamber. The plan was risky and very different from Zeliari methods. Varel hesitated before starting. This goes against many of our rules, she warned. Daniel looked at her with a gentle smile. Sometimes breaking a few rules leads to discovery. Varel pressed the button, the machine activated, and the sample began its new genetic process. For hours they monitored the results. The first few tests failed. The mutation grew stronger, then weaker, then stronger again. Varel's voice was tense. If we continue, we may lose the sample entirely. Daniel shook his head. Not yet. One more adjustment. He carefully changed the settings, introducing a tiny random mutation, something the Zeliari would never dare to do. The machine ran again. They both watched silently. Minutes passed. Then, the readings stabilized. It's weakening, Varel said softly. Surprised, Daniel smiled, leaning back. See, adaptation. Varel looked at him with new eyes. She had never seen anyone take such chances and succeed. The data was promising, and for the first time, she admitted to herself that this human was not simple at all. After the experiment, they both stayed late, reviewing the data together. The lab was quiet except for the soft hum of the machines. Daniel glanced at Varel, noticing how focused she looked as she read the numbers. You know, Varel, he said carefully, I never expected to find someone so brilliant out here. Working with you has been exciting. Varel paused, feeling an odd warmth in her chest. She looked at him, her voice softer than usual. I also did not expect much from this assignment, but you have surprised me, Daniel. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, neither spoke, but something unspoken passed between them. Over the following weeks, their experiments continued. The new approach showed great progress, and the Zeliari Council began taking notice of their work. Varel presented their findings in front of the council, mentioning Daniel's contributions carefully but proudly. As they left the council chamber, Daniel walked beside her. They seemed impressed. Varel nodded. They were, but they are also cautious. Mixing human methods with Zeliari science is still uncomfortable for many of them, Daniel chuckled. Well, sometimes it takes time to change old minds. Varel glanced at him. You seem unafraid of challenging authority. Daniel smiled. I don't do it to be rebellious. I do it because sometimes the truth is worth the risk. Once again, Varel found herself quietly admiring him. His courage, his confidence, it was unlike anything she had seen in her people. One evening, after another long day of work, Daniel invited Varel to join him for a short walk outside the research facility. She was hesitant at first, but finally agreed. They walked along a smooth pathway under the twin moons. The air was cool, and soft lights glowed from the crystal towers nearby. Varel spoke quietly. Our world is very different from yours. Daniel nodded yes, but beautiful in its own way. Peaceful, organized. She looked at him curiously. And yet you prefer chaos, do you not? Daniel laughed softly. Not chaos, just freedom. Humans are messy, emotional, and full of mistakes. But that makes us stronger in many ways. Varel paused, looking up at the sky. Perhaps there is something we can learn from your kind after all. Daniel smiled at her. And maybe I can learn something from you too. Like patience. For the first time, Varel allowed herself to smile back. It was small, but real. As they continued walking, Varel asked a question that surprised Daniel. Do humans believe in bonding with other species? Daniel looked at her carefully, sensing that this question carried more than simple curiosity. Some do. It depends on the individuals involved. Love, connection, they can happen in unexpected ways. Varel looked away, feeling her face warm slightly. She did not understand these emotions fully, but they were growing inside her. She had always believed that no human could ever be compatible with a Zeliari, emotionally or genetically. But working with Daniel was changing her beliefs. Later that night, in her private quarters, Varel sat alone, her thoughts racing. She reviewed Daniel's genetic profile again, focusing not just on his biology but on his behavior. He is not weak, he adapts, he feels deeply. His imperfections give him strength. Could such traits be valuable to us? She placed her hand on her chest, feeling the unusual warmth again. No human can satisfy me, or so I thought. The words echoed in her mind, but she could no longer fully believe them. Outside, the 2 moons of Veltrion 5 continued to shine, unaware of the changes beginning inside the heart of one of its brightest scientists. The bond between Varel and Daniel was growing stronger, but the biggest challenges were yet to come. End of Part 2. The following days were full of excitement. The success of their experiment gave new hope to the Zeliari people. The council allowed them to continue the research under strict supervision, but the risk was still there. The mutation was dangerous, and one wrong step could cause everything to collapse. Inside the bright laboratory, Varel and Daniel worked side by side. They had grown more comfortable with each other. The distance that once existed between them was now filled with respect, trust, and an invisible bond neither fully understood. As Daniel entered the lab one morning, Varel was already there, reviewing the latest data. Good morning, Varel, he said with a smile. Good morning, Daniel. I have processed the recent results. The hybrid gene you suggested is showing stable resistance to the mutation. That's great news, Daniel said. We might finally be close to a permanent solution. Varel nodded, but her face was serious. We must be careful. The next stage involves live cell integration. If it fails, the mutation may become stronger. Daniel understood the danger, but his optimism remained. Then we'll take it step by step, together. They prepared the sample for live cell testing. The machines buzzed as they worked. The chamber glowed softly as the hybrid gene merged with the Zeliari cell sample. For the first few hours, everything went smoothly. The readings were stable, but suddenly alarms began to sound. The lights inside the chamber turned red. Warning, instability detected, the machine's voice announced. Varel rushed to the controls. The mutation is reacting violently. The hybrid cells are mutating too fast. Daniel quickly analyzed the data. It's adapting faster than we expected. The system can't contain it. The numbers on the screen flashed wildly. The mutation was now threatening to spread to the entire lab system. We have to shut it down, Varel shouted. Daniel slammed the emergency button. The chamber locked itself, freezing the sample inside. The lights dimmed, and the alarms went silent. Both stood there, breathing heavily. That was close, Daniel said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Varel's voice was calm but shaken. We underestimated the mutation's ability to evolve. Daniel looked at her seriously. We need a different approach. After the near disaster, the council became involved immediately. A meeting was called. Daniel and Varel stood before the council members, who were seated in a high, glowing chamber. You were careless, one council member said sharply. Your experiment almost caused a full contamination. Varel stepped forward, her voice steady. We were testing a new method. The data we collected is valuable. The failure taught us more about the mutation's behavior. Another council member spoke coldly. Your methods are becoming dangerous, especially with human involvement. Daniel kept silent, sensing the tension in the room. The council's distrust toward him was clear. Varel defended him. Daniel's contributions have been essential. Without his ideas, we would not have made this much progress. The head counselor narrowed his eyes. Progress that nearly ended in disaster. He turned to Daniel. Human, your participation will now be limited. You may no longer assist with live testing. Daniel felt a deep frustration, but he stayed respectful. Understood. The council dismissed them, but the unspoken message was clear. Daniel was being pushed aside. Back at the lab, Varel was silent for a while. Daniel watched her as she stared at the data screens. They don't trust me, Daniel finally said. Varel sighed. They fear what they do not understand. Your methods are different from ours. They see risk where I see potential. Daniel smiled weakly. At least you see it. Varel turned to him, her voice softer. I trust you, Daniel, and I will continue our work, but we must be careful. Daniel nodded. Then let's find a way to beat this mutation, even if we have to do it in secret. Varel's eyes widened. Secret? That is dangerous. Daniel leaned closer. If we stop now, your people may never find a cure. We've come too far. Varel struggled inside. Breaking rules was not her way, but Daniel's words stirred something inside her. His bravery, his willingness to take risks for the greater good, it was something she admired deeply. Finally, she nodded. Very well, but we must proceed with extreme caution. That night, under the cover of silence, they returned to the lab using private access codes. Varel unlocked the restricted systems. They began designing a new experiment. This time, Daniel said, we'll use my DNA as a stabilizer. Varel looked at him, shocked. That has never been done. Human and Zeliari genetics are very different. Daniel smiled. That's exactly why it might work. My adaptive genes could balance the instability. Varel hesitated. If this fails, you could be harmed. Daniel's voice was calm. I'm willing to take that risk. Her heart beat faster. She realized then how much he cared not just about the science, but about her people, and about her. With great care, they collected a small sample of Daniel's DNA and introduced it to the hybrid system. The machines worked quietly, running the new sequences. Hours passed as they monitored every detail. Slowly, the data stabilized. It's working, Varel whispered. Daniel smiled, relief washing over him. We may have finally found the key. Varel looked at him, her voice full of emotion she could no longer hide. You risked everything. For this, Daniel met her eyes. For you, for your people, and maybe, because I believe in us. Varel's breath caught. For a moment, neither spoke. The barrier between them had fallen. But before they could celebrate, the council discovered their unauthorized experiment. Security officers stormed into the lab. Surrounding them, you have violated direct orders. The head counselor shouted. Virl stood protectively in front of Daniel. We have made progress. The hybrid treatment is stable. The counselor's voice was full of anger. You risked contamination of our species with foreign DNA. Daniel spoke up. We found a way to save your people. Isn't that what matters? But the council refused to listen. Both were arrested and taken into custody. Their experiment was seized. Inside the detention chamber, Daniel and Varel sat together. The silence was heavy. I'm sorry, Daniel whispered. I didn't mean to drag you into this. Varel shook her head, her eyes soft. "No, Daniel, I made the choice too because I believe in you." She gently reached for his hand. Their fingers touched, and for the first time, they shared a silent promise. The road ahead would be difficult, but their bond had grown strong, and neither was ready to give up. The fight for their future had just begun. End of Part 3. Inside the cold detention chamber, Daniel and Varel sat quietly. The walls were smooth and metallic, and a soft blue light glowed from above. Outside, Zelyari guards stood at attention, watching over them. For hours, neither of them spoke. They were both thinking about what had happened and what might come next. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "I never thought it would end like this." Varel turned her head towards him, her voice calm but soft. "It hasn't ended yet." Daniel smiled slightly. "You're more hopeful than I expected." Varel looked into his eyes. "You taught me hope." Her words surprised Daniel. Months ago, she was cold, distant, and ruled by logic, but now her voice carried warmth. There was emotion in her tone, something that rarely existed in Zelyari's speech. Daniel whispered, "Do you regret what we did?" She shook her head. "No, the risks were worth it. The data proves that your DNA can stabilize the mutation. We found a cure." Daniel sighed. "But the council won't listen." Varel leaned closer. "Not yet, but we still have a chance." Daniel watched her carefully. The distance between them had slowly disappeared. They were no longer just colleagues, they had become partners, allies, and perhaps something even deeper. "Varel," Daniel said quietly, "what we've built, it's more than just science, isn't it?" Varel paused for a moment. She could feel her heart beating faster. "No, it's not just science." Her cheeks warmed as she spoke. She had never allowed herself to feel such emotions before. Zelyari rarely discussed love. To them, relationships were based on logic, not feelings. But now, with Daniel, she felt something she could not explain with logic. Meanwhile, outside the chamber, the council was holding a heated discussion. The head counselor paced back and forth, his face tense. "They have broken our laws. They experimented with human DNA. This is a dangerous path." Another council member, older and wiser, raised his voice. "But their experiment succeeded. The cure works." The head counselor snapped. "At what cost? If we allow this, we open our genetics to uncontrolled mixing. The purity of our species will be compromised." The room grew silent. Finally, third council member spoke. "Perhaps it is time to reconsider our traditions. The human has shown courage, and Dr. Varel's research is undeniable." The debate continued late into the night as the council struggled between fear of change and the possibility of survival. Back in the detention chamber, Varel stood up and faced Daniel. "They will not hold us here forever. Either they will accept the truth or silence us." Daniel's face grew serious. "We can't let them destroy the research. If they erase the data, all our work will be lost." Varel nodded. "There may be a way." She explained that she had secretly copied the full research data into a private storage device hidden within her laboratory. If they could retrieve it, they could prove their discovery to the wider public, not just the council. Daniel stood up, his determination rising. "Then we need to get out of here." Varel looked at the security panel beside the door. "I might be able to override the system using her access codes." Varel started working on the security controls. The system resisted at first, but after several minutes, the door finally opened with a soft hiss. They quickly stepped into the empty hallway, moving quietly to avoid the guards. They reached the lab after carefully avoiding several patrols. The room was just as they had left it, filled with holographic screens, machines, and glowing test tubes. Varel went to the hidden panel on the wall and pulled out the small storage device containing the research. "Got it," she said. Just as they were about to leave, the alarm suddenly sounded. The council had discovered their escape. Red lights flashed, and security forces closed in on them. Daniel grabbed Varel's hand. "This way." They ran through the long corridors, their hearts pounding. Guards appeared ahead, blocking their path. "There's no way out," Varel said, breathing heavily. Daniel quickly scanned the area and noticed a maintenance tunnel nearby. "In here." They squeezed into the narrow tunnel, crawling forward as the guards searched the halls behind them. After a long and difficult escape, they finally reached a safe zone outside the main complex. From there, they contacted a group of independent scientists who had always questioned the council's strict rules. The scientists, both Zelyari and a few humans, welcomed them with open arms. "You did it," one of them said. "You found the cure." Varel handed them the storage device. "The data is all here. The council may not listen, but the people will." The independent group began spreading the information across the planet. News spread fast. The public was shocked to learn about the success of the human-Zeliari hybrid experiment. Many citizens began to question the council's refusal to accept change. Back at the council headquarters, the pressure was rising. Citizens were demanding answers. The head councillor stood before a large gathering of Zeliari people. "Our laws exist to protect us," he said firmly. "We must not risk our future with uncontrolled genetic mixing." But from the crowd, a voice shouted, "What future? Without this cure we have no future." Others joined in, raising their voices in support of Varel and Daniel's work. The councillor realized the public no longer fully supported their decisions. The old beliefs were being challenged by new hope. Soon after, the council called for an emergency meeting. This time, Daniel and Varel were invited to speak. Standing before the council, Varel held her head high. "Our research proves that human DNA can stabilize the mutation. Without this cure, our species will suffer. The choice is clear." The head councillor's face was tense. "You have risked much. You have broken our laws." Daniel stepped forward. "Sometimes laws must change when survival is at stake." The chamber grew silent. Finally, after long debate, the council voted. The majority supported allowing the new treatment to be used under careful monitoring. The council leader spoke. "We will allow the treatment, and we recognize your contributions." The room erupted with quiet applause. Daniel and Varel looked at each other, relief and joy filling their hearts. After the meeting, as they walked through the peaceful gardens of the council's estate, Daniel spoke softly. "We did it." Varel nodded. "Yes. And now, our people have a chance." Daniel smiled. "And what about us?" Varel paused, then turned to him. "I once believed a human could never satisfy a Zeliari, but I was wrong." She reached out, taking his hand. "Gently, we are stronger together." Daniel smiled warmly, feeling her hand in his. The stars above them shone brightly, as if celebrating their victory. The bond between them had grown beyond science, beyond politics. It was something rare and powerful, something neither of them had ever expected. But their journey was not yet over. The world was changing, and they would face it together. End of part 4. Weeks passed after the council approved the new treatment. The genetic cure spread quickly across Veltrian 5. The dangerous mutation that once threatened the Zeliari people was now under control. The population began to recover, and hope returned to the once fearful society. Daniel and Varel continued working together, but things were no longer the same. They were now known as heroes across both human and Zeliari worlds. Scientists from many planets came to study their research. Their names were spoken with respect. Still, Varel noticed that many Zeliari elders looked at Daniel with quiet judgment. Even though the cure had saved many lives, some still feared the human influence. But more and more younger Zeliari supported the partnership, seeing a new path for their future. One evening, after a long day of work, Daniel and Varel sat together under the twin moons. As they often did, Daniel looked at her, his voice gentle. "Do you ever wonder how different things might have been if you never accepted me as your partner?" Varel thought for a moment before answering. "Yes, in the beginning, I never believed a human could offer anything valuable to us. I believed my people were superior in every way." She paused and looked at him with soft eyes. "But you changed that. You taught me that strength does not always come from perfection." Daniel smiled. "And you showed me that discipline and care can lead to great things too." Their hands touched gently. The simple gesture meant more than words. One morning, a message arrived from the council. They had called for a special gathering this time, not for punishment, but for recognition. The great hall was filled with citizens from across Veltrian 5. Holographic banners displayed the images of Daniel and Varel standing side by side. The councillors sat high above, their faces serious but respectful. The head councillor stood and spoke to the crowd. "Today, we gather not to judge, but to acknowledge the work of Dr. Varel and human biologist Daniel has saved countless lives. Their discovery will secure our future for generations." The crowd applauded. He continued, "But more than that, they have shown us that unity between different worlds is not something to fear, but something to embrace." The audience grew quiet as Varel was invited to speak. She stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "There was a time when I believed no human could ever satisfy the needs of our people. I thought humans were weak, flawed, and inferior, but I was wrong." She paused, looking directly at Daniel. "This human showed me that strength comes in many forms: bravery, compassion, creativity, and love. His imperfections are not weaknesses, but gifts. Together we have achieved what neither species could have done alone." The crowd erupted into applause, many rising to their feet. Daniel's heart swelled as he listened to her words. Her confession was more than just about science, it was personal, honest, and deeply emotional. After the ceremony, as they walked through the peaceful gardens, Varel finally shared what she had been holding inside for so long. Daniel, I have studied every part of your genetic code, but the most important part of you is something I cannot measure. Daniel smiled gently. What's that? She stopped and faced him, her voice soft. Your heart. Daniel reached for her hands, holding them carefully. You have mine, Varel, and I have yours. For a moment they stood in silence under the glowing moons. Everything they had fought for, every risk they had taken, led them to this moment. Their bond was no longer just about science or politics, it was about two beings, from two different worlds, finding each other against all odds. In the months that followed, the Zeliari world slowly began to change. More human scientists were invited to collaborate. Mixed research teams were formed. Even cultural exchanges began, allowing both species to learn from one another. Some resistance still remained among the older generation, but the younger Zeliari embraced the new future with excitement. They saw hope, progress, and the possibility of something greater than isolation. Daniel and Varel became symbols of this change. Their relationship stood as proof that unity between two very different species was not only possible but powerful. One day, while visiting a newly established joint research center, Varel received an unexpected message from the council. We request your presence for an important discussion. The message said. Daniel went with her. They entered the grand chamber, where several council members waited. The head counselor spoke first. Dr. Varel, human biologist. Daniel, your work has brought great success to our people. You have proven the strength of partnership. Varel nodded respectfully. Thank you, counselor. The counselor continued. We have discussed your personal relationship as well. While such bonds between species were once forbidden, we now see their value. The council no longer opposes your union. Daniel and Varel exchanged surprised glances. This was a moment neither of them expected. The counselor added, your bond will serve as a model for future generations. You have shown us that the impossible can become possible. That evening, as they stood together beneath the twin moons, once again, Daniel took Varel's hand. I never imagined that when I first arrived here this would be my home. Varel smiled softly. And I never imagined that a human would one day hold my heart. They stood together, watching the stars above. Two different lives, two different worlds, now joined as one. The night was calm, but inside their hearts, there was peace, hope, and love. Their journey had been difficult, but it led them to something beautiful, something neither of them would have found alone. And so, the human who once could not satisfy a Zeliari became the one who changed everything. Together, they built a future where differences became strength, and love became the bridge between worlds. End of Part 5, Final Part.